Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, as we take a spin on the next ride at the Elon Musk circus, I'd like to look at the Conservatives' attitude to the row blowing up right now. See, some of the dishonest and morally empty statements they're making might make strategic sense, but their defence of Musk just seems baffling to me. Is there something I'm missing? Or are they actually this clueless? But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So the Conservatives are not only dancing to the same beat as Reform UK on pushing disinformation on grooming gangs, but they're also siding very strongly with Elon Musk. On the day yesterday, he was literally calling for the United States to invade the United Kingdom. I mean, what is the state of our political discourse when the leader of the opposition backs a foreigner calling for the invasion of her own country? Like, who tries to build an election campaign on a platform of support for the invasion and subjugation of your own country? And Byline Times have written an article on this, like, baffling support for Musk coming from the Conservatives. They're calling it moral cowardice from Badenoch. Now, some of you will know, I don't go into for that line of thinking myself. I'm a very black and white person when it comes to right and wrong, and indeed quite a lot of aspects of life. But I also get there is genuine nuance in politics. If, for example, your party of choice has to say certain things about certain issues, otherwise it'll cost them the election and allow their sort of mortal enemies into power, should you say them? You know, I would say the greater immorality is in allowing a terrible government to run the country. So I don't waste time talking much about morality in politics. There really are greater good arguments in politics. Sometimes it's used as an excuse more than a reason, but they do exist. So I'm not going to waste time on whether what the Tories are doing is moral cowardice or not. In fact, quite interesting, again, aficionados of Yes Minister like myself will know, you know, if you describe a minister as brave, it tends to mean you're going to do something that's going to cost you votes or even the election. So by definition, cowardice in politics means you're going to do something that wins the election. So it's a vaguely silly thing to accuse a politician of. And also, if I was to get into arguments about whether it's cowardice or not, I'd first of all have to work out whether Badenoch believes what she says or not. But there is no point. If saying something means she increases her chances of winning the election, and if she genuinely believes that her party is the best government for the country, then yes, she's going to argue that the moral course of action is to prioritise winning the election, even if it means getting your hands dirty. My question is, does this really help her win the election? I can well understand how the Tories' rhetoric on grooming gangs might work in their favour, as long as they can win the argument, and they've got the whole of the right-wing media helping them. Even though, ironically, that is more reprehensible than supporting Musk right now. You know, his right to talk about invading the UK. We have a mad situation going on in British politics right now. Despite the narrative in the Tory media, we have had inquiries into child sexual exploitation. We had a huge one. Oh, we should have this big national inquiry. We had one. It took 7 years. It cost £200 million. As a result, we have 20 recommendations, which the Tories did not implement. Robert Jenrick today tried to say, we started them. You had 2 years. 2 years, 1.5 years, technically, 1.5 years after it came out. Now, I can understand how not all 20 get implemented. And in fact, you may say to a couple of them, oh, it's not really feasible. But in 1.5 years to have nothing implemented, you weren't taking it seriously. Now, if Labour announced a new inquiry, as the Tories and others are calling for, let me tell you what will happen. The people who really care about action against grooming gangs will accuse the government of delaying tactics. Because sometimes that is a reason for an inquiry. Sometimes a government orders an inquiry because it really does want to find out how to fix a problem and it wants an expert to look into it. Sometimes it orders an inquiry just to avoid taking action. After all, can't do anything until the inquiry is concluded. How many times have we heard from governments, oh, can't comment right now, there's an inquiry going on. And, you know, a really big inquiry takes years. So you order a big inquiry, some other bugger will have to implement it years later. Indeed, this £200 million inquiry was begun with David Cameron as Prime Minister. It was 3 prime ministers later before it reported back. We were almost onto our 4th. It was just before Rishi Sunak became prime minister. So if Labour had said, yeah, let's have another inquiry, great idea, then people who genuinely want action would have called that delaying tactics. Yet the government aren't doing that. They're saying, we've had an inquiry, we've had some recommendations, we're going to implement the recommendations. Yvette Cooper announced some of the measures yesterday in Parliament. In fact, on the moral front, I might ask why the Conservatives, if they really care about child sex abuse, why didn't they implement the recommendations themselves? And why don't they want Labour to? Why do they want to stop Labour implementing the action points? Could almost think that they want to protect child abusers, not stop them. Now, I don't really believe that. I think they're just trying to make political capital out of this. But nonetheless, you could absolutely interpret it that way. However, with the media being happy to present a very false narrative, you can see why the Conservatives would push the disinformation. If it can wrong foot some voters, it might work for them electorally, even if it's morally repulsive to those of us who, let's be honest, weren't thinking of voting Conservative ever. But it's Badenoch's support for Elon Musk that I find odd, because I don't see the strategic benefit in doing so. Musk turned on Farage because he wasn't prepared to be extreme enough. He was too woke for the ketamine kid. Well, although the Conservatives are shifting themselves pretty close to Reform UK's ground, they're not going to cross any lines which Farage isn't prepared to cross. Badenoch is not going to be prepared to back Tommy Robinson any more than Farage was. Remember, it was the result of people in Reform UK urging Trump's allies to try to rein Musk in with his support for Robinson, which triggered the bust-up at the weekend. Well, there were Conservatives doing the same thing. They didn't want to be associated with Tommy Robinson either. So Musk will not switch his support from Reform UK to the Conservative Party. In fact, given that he just really doesn't understand British politics, judging by some of what he says, wouldn't surprise me if he just decides to donate to Tommy Robinson and Britain First instead. And yet, after last year's far-right riots and terror attacks, the public, which did not exactly endorse them, there's only 8% said the disorder was justified. They blamed a range of factors, but the failure of social media was right up there. 88% of people said that the fault for the riots lay at the feet of the rioters themselves, which is fair enough, absolutely. But of the external factors, social media came top with 86% saying it was their fault. And the platform, which was reported as having the major impact, was, of course, Musk's Twitter. So with regards to Musk, I don't see what the Conservatives stand to gain by supporting him. But they do risk losing some of their more moderate support. Like Badenoch should remember that although the Liberal Democrats took a lot of seats off them last year, they not only intend to hold on to them, they want to win more at the next election. While she's trying to persuade Reform UK that the Conservatives are, or at least their voters, are crazy enough to support at the next election, she may be forgetting there are still plenty of people who voted for her party last year who do not take kindly to people attacking our communities or foreigners arguing that the UK should be invaded and taken over by a foreign power. And these so-called Conservatives with a small c voters are not wholly opposed to voting for the Liberal Democrats if the Tories leave them behind. Also occurs to me there's another way in which this is a bit of a no-win situation for Badenoch. So let's say Musk patches things up with Farage, right? Kiss and make better. Badenoch is supporting someone who intends to bankroll Reform UK with the express purpose of taking even more votes from her party. Labour too, of course, but anything Reform UK do will always pull more votes from the Tories than Labour. So in a first-past-the-post system, it's net bad for the Tories. How ridiculous will it look for Badenoch to be singing the praises of a foreigner calling for the invasion of the UK and funding her political opposition? And let's say Musk doubled down on Farage. That's it, the bromance is over, I've had enough of him, and Musk refuses to help Reform UK beyond just echoing some of their talking points. Well, out of electoral necessity, Reform UK may well, as soon as they've given up any hope of getting him back, have to start calling Musk out for a few things. Because if people on the far right are going to have to choose between Musk and Farage, well, Reform UK want it to be Farage. And they're no strangers to the smear campaign. Even if they just label him as mentally ill, which actually looks credible at this point, even that can't work in the Tories' favour, because Reform UK, to be successful in their own terms, They need to appeal to some slightly more moderate voters next time, but their support doesn't need to be anywhere near as broad as for the Conservatives. The Conservatives are not going to even try to claim that winning 25 seats is a victory. Now, Nigel Farage, if he wins 25 seats in the next election, he'll be cock-a-hoop. He'll call that his massive victory, right? He'll have a party and everything. Or Conservatives can't even be happy with 125, even though that would technically be a slight improvement. They need 325. And I see no plan to achieve that which can possibly involve supporting Elon Musk. Badenoch is far more likely to drive Conservative voters into the arms of the Liberal Democrats than to snag any Reform UK voters back. And at this point, I'm wondering if Badenoch is even conducting any basic research into her party's positions, or if she's just acting on instinct. If the latter, then I'd be very surprised if those instincts are going to work out well for her. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.